So this is the sixth of our sixth class series. Yeah, it went fast, didn't it? Well, I haven't got a plan yet, but I'll let you know soon. I'll talk to Rabbi Karen and think about what we can do next, okay? Because it's a beautiful thing for me to do too. And I was just saying that we started 6 weeks ago in the depths of winter, and today it's starting to feel like spring, and I feel like we're being liberated. I'm feeling a lot better just because of the weather, so that's good. You saw Robin?
This is not in a tease.
And we tapped our maple trees this week because it's the time for the sap to start flowing. So. No, this is actually, I mean, now there's no early or late anymore, but this winter, the last couple months have been sort of cold like the old days. So now it's right on schedule.
Right, exactly. My
But
daughter makes maple syrup. She
yeah.
makes like 30 gallons.
Unbelievable. We'll make 2. Okay. So all right, so we're going to convene. We're going to say the blessing for studying Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. We are blessed to engage in the words of Torah. I know where I'm headed. We'll see where the route takes us today. And let me just there I'm going to focus on a particular passage where obviously, the story goes on, but I'm going to focus on a particular passage which I think will be a really fruitful way to bring a lot of what we've discussed together, to bring it to a nice, not a closing point, but a integration of a lot of different themes. And that passage, I'm going to share my screen with you all on Zoom, can be found in our Chumashim if you want to follow. And some of you even heard me teach about this before. Page 382, the beginning of Parshat Va'era, 382, but I'll be jumping around from there. And I'm going to share my screen now so you can see the text. Okay, there's that. We'll go to chapter 6, verse 2. Don't get dizzy watching this on the Zoom. My goodness, that goes fast. I went too far. Okay, there we go. So we're at this moment. I think we'll read this passage, but then go back and come back towards it, okay? This is the beginning of Parshat Va'era, the second Torah portion. It says, God spoke to Moses and said to him, I am Yud He Vav He. Or as we have in our text here, eternal in this printed text. But on the Zoom version, they've inserted just those Hebrew letters, the ineffable name of God. We're going to talk about that a little more today too. I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as El Shaddai, but I did not make myself known to them by my name, Yud He Vav He. I also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land in which they lived as sojourners. This is God speaking to Moses. I have now heard the moaning of the Israelites because the Egyptians are holding them in bondage, and I have remembered my covenant. Say therefore, Moses, say therefore to the Israelite people, I am Yud He Vav He. I will free you from the sufferings of the Egyptians, and I will deliver you from bondage. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and through extraordinary chastisements. And I will take you to be my people, and I will be your God. And you shall know that I, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, am your God who freed you from the labors of the Egyptians. And I will bring you into the land which I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I will give it to you as your inheritance, or possession, it says here, Morsha, inheritance. I, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. So imagine what a message. Right? This is like, we're doing it. You're gonna. And then it says, but when Moses told this to the children of Israel, they would not listen, or it could mean they did not listen, or they could not listen. It doesn't say. It may not have been willful. They could not listen. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. Their spirits crushed by cruel bondage. Okay, that sort of speaks for itself, why they couldn't hear a message of possibility and hope. Right? They were crushed. They didn't have a sense of possibility. They were in hopeless, despair. Okay, I'm going to go on a little so we can hear a little more. Okay, they couldn't hear him. And then it says, and God spoke to, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh spoke to Moses saying, Bo, come and tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to let the Israelites go from his land. Okay, now Moses has a response you can expect. But Moses said, appealed, I don't know. It just says said in Hebrew, so there's a zillion ways you can say something in English, right? Saying, look, the Israelites would not listen to me. How then would Pharaoh listen to me? And I, right, Va'ani arel sfatayim. I am a man of impeded speech. My lips are uncircumcised. We've talked about this before, but I want to explain it again. Arel means, an arel is a sheath, a covering. Uncircumcised lips means I have a sheath over my mouth. I can't speak. Okay. And then the passage, and then it says, okay, so I want to stop there actually, and reflect on this passage. So here's a message of liberation, of promise, of hope, of possibility, of change. And God says, the voice of God says to Moses, go tell the people this. And the people of Israel, the slaves, could not hear him because their spirits had been crushed by cruel bondage. And then God says, okay, now go tell Pharaoh. And Moses is like, incredulous. You know, the people won't listen to me. Why would Pharaoh listen to me? It's like, he has no interest in this happening. I thought maybe the slaves had some interest, but Pharaoh, what are you crazy? Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing the screen for a little bit. There you go. So I'm almost obsessed with this passage as a kind of crux of the narrative. And we've spoken about Aviva Zornberg, who talks about this, and I'm going to be referring to her a lot today, but I'm also going to be referring to a Hasidic teacher who's been an incredible source of wisdom to me, known as the Sfat Emet, who lived in the late 19th and beginning of the 20th century in Poland. So his teachings are also on my mind, and some others as well. Now let's go back in the narrative a little bit. When this is not the first time that Moses has brought this message, right? In fact, I think we should look at the text. I'm going to share the screen again. And I want us to go back a couple of chapters. Well, let's look at chapter 4, verse 29. You'll find that we have to go back to the previous portion. You'll find it on page 357. Verse 29, that's up at the top. So Moses has, we haven't read all of Moses' interactions with the voice at the burning bush, but Moses is now headed back to Egypt with his mission. And he meets Aaron, who comes out to greet him. And then Moses and Aaron assembled all the elders of the Israelites, because God had told him to assemble all the elders and go to Pharaoh. And Aaron, remember how Moses said, we didn't read this passage, but Moses said, I can't talk well. Then Aaron will be your spokesperson. We're going to work our way back to that as well. And Aaron repeated all the words that Yod-Heh-Vav had spoken to Moses and performed the signs in the sight of those assembled. Remember, the staff turns into a snake, and he puts his hand in his robe, and it comes out, and it's all leprous. And then no, it's all like diseased, and then he puts his hand back in, and it's healed. These are the signs that Moses is given by God to try to persuade, to show the Israelites that this isn't, that there's something special going on here. So Aaron showed this and performed the signs, and the assembly was convinced. This is the first time. When they heard that Yod-Heh-Vav had taken note of the Israelites and that God had seen their plight, they bowed low in homage. And then at the beginning of next chapter, in verse 5, immediately it says, and so afterward Moses and Aaron went and said to Pharaoh, thus says Yod-Heh-Vav, the God of Israel, let my people go, that they may celebrate a festival for me in the wilderness. And this is where Pharaoh says, in verse 2, Pharaoh said, who is Yod-Heh-Vav, that I should heed him and let Israel go? I do not know Yod-Heh-Vav, and I will not let Israel go. And they discuss it with him, they debate with him, and Pharaoh says, now I'm summarizing. You guys, you're just trying to give your people time off. You guys are lazy. You guys are trying to skirt the whole system. You guys are shirkers of your work. I'm going to show you. And so the whole of chapter 5 is how Pharaoh says, now you have to make just as many bricks, but I'm not providing straw anymore. You have to go pick up your own straw to make your bricks. And then the overseers, there seem to be two categories. There's the taskmasters who are Egyptian and the overseers who are Hebrews. And the overseers work under the taskmasters, and the overseers go to Pharaoh and say, we can't do this. He says, out of my sight. You guys are just lazy. And he works them to the bone in chapter 5. And so at the end of chapter 5, in verse 20, on the next page in your Chumash, I'll just read it to you. This is on page 359. So as Moses and as the overseers who have just heard from Pharaoh that he's increasing their workload because they complain, again, Pharaoh's a master tyrant, right? This is how you deal with the workers, right? You make their lives more miserable because they asked for something. And so as the overseers left Pharaoh's presence, they came upon Moses and Aaron standing in their path. And they said to Moses and Aaron, "May Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh look upon you and punish you for making us loathsome to Pharaoh." The Hebrew is even more hivashtem et rechenu, for making us reek, for making us odious. Rechenu is our smell. So for making us odious to Pharaoh and his courtiers, and putting a sword in their hands to slay us. So Moses returned to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh and said, "My Lord, why did you bring harm upon this people? Why did you send me? Ever since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has dealt worse with this people, and still you have not delivered your people."
No.
Yeah, did you want to say anything, Terry?
Yeah, later on page 384.
Yeah.
God predicts that Pharaohs will say no, and he's predicting that he will multiply his signs, line 3.
Right.
I will multiply my signs. And then he's predicting, again, Pharaoh will not heed you. So it's like he set this task knowing it would fail.
Okay. So now I want to back away from this for a minute. And I want to give us a frame to look at this story today. This is a story written by human beings. Don't think about our plight, about this. I'm going to say more about that. So I want you to not think about God in the story today as a willful supernatural being in charge of everything. Okay, just drop that.
Yeah.
Think of God as the reality principle. Okay, or think of God as how should I say it? Think of God as the human ability to imagine a better world. Okay, because this is a story we're telling where we know the world can be better, and yet it isn't. Like our moment right now, we know the world can be better, and it isn't. Yet we humans are imbued with this ability to imagine a better world. Like, it's interesting that this is our capacity. Okay, let me say a few more things, and then I'll recognize that people want to say something, okay? Because I want to complete this frame so the way we can think about it. Because if we get into a conversation about, but why did God harden Pharaoh's heart? Why is God so mean? So just drop it. Remember, when Moses is at the burning bush and says, "What is your name?" The name is not a personality. The name is, "I am becoming. I am that which might become. I am the energy ever changing of life. I am. I will be. I am becoming." So don't give God a personality now, but instead think of it as the storyteller in our Torah trying to express this mysterious capacity of humans to imagine a different situation, a more loving situation, a fairer situation, a more just situation, a more spacious human relationships. And yet here we are, and we're stymied. We feel so stymied. And so what we have to, so the message of the story in this way of describing it is to listen to God, to heed, to hear, to shema, is to listen to that part of ourselves that can imagine a just world. That exists. We know that exists because we have it in here. So in a story, you project that amazing ability out onto the universe, right? And here we are, all screwed up as usual, and yet we all can imagine it's in us. We see it. We know it's possible. So this is a story in this telling about human beings unable to listen to, follow, or manifest our picture of a better world. Okay. Now, does that make sense, everybody?
Yep.
Okay. So now, Paul, you have something you want to say? And then Jerry, and then.
I see God as being like our parents, seemingly infallible. Maybe they can do anything because we're just little infants or children, but at the same time, they're just parents, It's as if everything is not perfect, but anything is possible,
Yes. Thank you. And everything we say is going to be metaphor. Parents, our ability to imagine, it's all metaphors, and we put it into this a story form because we don't know what God is. So just drop it, and instead revel in the metaphor that puts you in touch with life, with life's energy, right? Jerry.
So this is a story,
Right.
and stories in the very, 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 very beginning were always mouth to mouth, told to
Oral.
children. When did something like this get written down?
Oh,
And how did that affect the oral story?
isn't that a great question? So, a short answer, so that I don't, a short answer is that the best guess of scholarship is that our oral tradition got written down when we were exiled to Babylonia in the 6th century BCE because of an understandable concern that all our stories were tied up with the rhythms of life, right? At Passover, we told this story. At Sukkot, we told this story. When we did this, we had it appears that the best guess is that this became a written tradition starting around the 6th century BCE in order to preserve our stories.
So that's like 2,500 years.
Longer, yeah.
A little bit more.
Yeah, even more. And then what happened, as over that next period of time, the story got committed to writing, is that immediately an interpretive tradition started to emerge. Otherwise, we'd be reading a 2,500-year-old story, and it wouldn't cross the threshold to, yeah, exactly. So then there is an inherent paradox or conflict in preserving our cultural traditions, which is that there's always the danger of them getting fossilized. But if we don't have them in some form, then they'll be forgotten, especially for a people that's scattered everywhere. So the Jewish people relied on the written text to bind us. One George Steiner was a Jewish thinker, said the text was our homeland for so many centuries.
Right.
And so, but that always then brings the danger of it becoming something that loses it. Right.
That's why we keep doing this all the time.
That's why we do this. This is the activity that we do to bring this text alive for us. And that's how the Jews did it. And that's how we still do it. And fortunately, the stories are malleable and rich and true enough that we can do it.
So I just hark back to last week when we were talking about Moses said, well, how am I going to do this? And Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh says, I'll be with you. But what Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, he, she, it, they are meaning from what you just said is not, I'm going to be the hand that holds you and helps you and does that. The life unfolding will always be with you, and you just have to go with it and deal with it, not as a guide that's going to lead you, but as the life force that's.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That can we align ourselves with life unfolding? Just recognize it. Can we align ourselves with the energy of life unfolding? That requires, that is the question, right? As we deal with all the difficulties of being human beings, can we also keep ourselves open to what is coming, what is happening, what is unfolding? How do we pay attention to it? How do we discern it? Shema Yisrael. How do we do it? Susan, and then Susan.
Yeah, continuing with this metaphor, how does one, or how do we understand the thing, I will take you to be my people, and I will be your God? I mean, where do we go with that? And isn't that very charged, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes, it's all very charged. And it's the challenge we face of, I want to pull us out of that for now so that we can focus on your experience of being alive, my experience of being alive, the experience of what it means to say, let my people go. So I want to take it out of any of the ways it's become fixed as we're special or different, or this is our God, and just read it in this very personal way today. Yeah.
So I feel like the divineness of this is that even though it's written and it needed to be written, the purpose of it being written is so we could practice this in our own time, in our own generations, to apply it. And along with it, how do we deal with life unfolding? It's also personal to become an adult, a grown-up that can tolerate life rather than a kid, and the kid inside me who demands life be a certain way. That my parents should fix it, that this should happen. I mean, I see it happening now. You know, the reliance on whoever, Pharaoh or Moses or whoever happens to be there, the reliance on that, instead of the reliance on, I will be with you, says to me, I will be in you to help you along with that struggle as I struggle.
Thank you. Thank you. Carol.
I'm just thinking differently about life unfolding right now, in that how much do I learn from just watching what's happening now and looking forward to how that will affect me, how it will affect the way I see things, how it will affect the way I feel about things on every level. That if I stay awake to what's happening around me, that's one definition of life unfolding.
Thank you. So with that frame, come back to this moment we started in. The people couldn't hear Moses because their spirits had been crushed by cruel bondage. Pharaoh wouldn't listen to Moses. We're going to talk about Pharaoh. And Moses also is stymied. So here's how I heard it. Let me see if I can quote Aviva Zornberg here. Let me find that statement. The crisis in this drama of redemption enters its most fraught moment. It could be sketched with a kind of structural simplicity. God's will, okay, now translate that to what I did. What is God's will? Okay, this is what I want to say. So we understand God as the creative force of the universe. Well, look around. God's will is for life to flourish, right? God's will is for a phantasmagorical, like living and then decaying and living again. Life, oh my God, the creator. Who created this? And whatever that energy was, it just wants life to happen. Do you follow what I'm saying? So call that God's will. Okay? And the message of redemption being that for some reason, which we don't understand, but which the Torah expresses as God making us in the divine image, this species has the possibility of visualizing things being better than they are. So if we are part of that divine flourishing, then for us humans to fulfill our aliveness means to listen to those possibilities. We don't know why we have that possibility, but it resides in almost all of us, unless it's crushed or pushed off by hard-heartedness, or in Moses' case, perhaps someone who thinks, what can I do? Why me? Who me? I like it out here being a shepherd in the wilderness. Okay, I'll go. I don't know. It's like all the doubts we have. And yet we all know, each of us and all of us, we can imagine a more loving, more just, more beautiful human society. Why is that? Well, I guess it's part of God's plan, as it were, because we're part of this astonishing flourishing of creativity and life. And we humans have a particular capacity, which the Torah names as a sort of divine ability to think, project, imagine, envision, and then act towards that. So God's will, his message of redemption, is blocked by all three human protagonists, by Pharaoh, by the Israelites, and by Moses himself, who says, I have a sheath over my lips. And they are all described as not listening. The people could not listen to Moses. Pharaoh would not listen to Moses. Moses says, they won't listen to me. I can't say anything. So there's so each of these three protagonists in the story, the surge is blocked. The surge of life is blocked by the human protagonists. It's like the prophet Amos says, justice shall flow like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. I don't know if I can think of a better phrase from the Torah to describe how humans somehow can understand that our idea of what life should be like has a kind of natural force behind it. And yet we impede it. Moses' speech is impeded. And so in terms of the human, this human drama of, can there be a better world? Right now, at this moment, it's stopped. In fact, one of the fascinating things that Aviva Zornberg goes into, she cites a midrash that describes an ancient midrash. Again, now we're going to get into metaphors. God is parent. The fetus, Israel, has to be born. It's gotta happen. And Pharaoh, as it were, Egypt, is so in other words, the only way to get the baby out is going to be a forceps birth, because the baby doesn't want to come out. Right? Remember, the Israelites are crushed spirit. They don't want to come out. Yet we understand that this has to happen. This is what life unfolding. It has to be this way. We yearn for it. We know it. We pray for it. We plead for it. Right? It's in all of us. We're all feeling it. And yet the children of Israel, they're stuck in the womb, as it were. Which is also compared later in Deuteronomy to a blast furnace, to that God has to remove us like iron from a blast furnace. So it's like, it's a really, it's stuck.
Mm.
And yet a forceps birth is violent. And to get us out of Egypt, there's going to be a lot of damage done because the energy is blocked.
Mm.
So again, now you can say, well, why did God make the plagues? Why this, why that? I'm not talking in that, no willful deity here. We're talking about the energy of life, especially in our human realm. Why does it have to be so hard? Well, because we're not listening, right? Right? Yeah.
Well, birth can be painful. Mhm. And circumcision, this reminds me of why there's circumcision. It's tearing something away so something else can be there. Aren't there passages of circumcising the heart?
Yes. Several times in the Torah, God says to the children, to the Israelites, especially in Deuteronomy, circumcise your heart so that you can serve me. Right? So it means take the sheaths off of your heart or off of your lips. And yes, circumcision is such a powerful symbol because you unsheath the generative organ.
Yes.
You know, it's like
Yeah.
potent image, isn't it? Like from which the life emerges, right? Yes, that's very important. So, so first so now we can, one way we can read this story now is like, what's impeding us? You, me, you,
Yeah.
you know, on any level in our lives, from serving life unfolding. And now remember, when we serve life unfolding, there are no guarantees.
That's
In fact, we're going to die.
Yep.
Right? It's the way it rolls. Right? So and this is what I've taught, you know, for years. For me, this is the only way I can read this. Therefore, it's about how do we be the most alive?
Mhm.
How do we be the most alive? The more alive we are, the more we risk, because the more vulnerable we make ourselves. So being an adult means figuring out the balance between protecting ourselves and our loved ones and being fully alive, right? It's like, so there's no like single formula that's going to work here. There's no guarantees. It could all just fall apart. And yet, if our spirits have been crushed, we're never going to be able to serve God. Not the way the Torah understands it. Yes, Lori. Speak a little louder because there's people listening on this microphone here.
Following life unfolding is being attentive. I couldn't find the right word for the other part of the sentence, but what I'm trying to get to is, before you even get to that, you have to be attentive to life unfolding. And that's the hard part, because we're so well defended and we have fear and, you know, shyness. Sometimes very well founded fear, like for those whose spirits have been crushed, and very, very, very hard fought defenses against having been hurt or crushed in different ways. So I think the challenge for us, and I think once we get to that attentive state, the rest follows pretty easily.
The attentive state.
That's hero Israel.
Inside, like, about the differences of humans, my God, I opened up my brain so much because I started thinking about the other creatures and inhabitants of the earth and how we are different. And do they have imagination? I wonder, you know, are we the only ones? That just broke me this morning into like a whole other dream state.
Good.
So thank you. But I think that once we're attentive to life unfolding, it's a very simple path to getting stuck.
Thank you. To be attentive is shema. Shema means listen. It means heed, as in to heed is to pay attention. It means attend, O Israel. So to be attentive, to listen, And the slaves could not hear Moses. They could not Shema. And the Shema Yisrael, there's a reason why it's the mantra of Judaism. Hear, O Israel, the classic, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Listen, pay attention, open yourselves, attend, O Israel. Yod He Vav He, life unfolding is that which we want to serve. And life unfolding, and this is where it really goes, is one. We're participating in what is when we do that, the oneness that is. And again, we all have that intuition. We have moments when we are one with the universe. Each of us does. This is not a rational, this is not a place that we can debate or have a rational discussion about. It's a sublime experience that's part of our makeup as these expressions of life. And so our intuition, again, is we want to privilege that state of consciousness. But it's really, 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 really hard to do that because life's hard, right? It's just hard. It's not easy. And that's why Yisrael, our name Israel, again, for those unfamiliar, comes from the time when Jacob wrestles with God and God gives him a new name. Jacob spent the night by the river wrestling with God, it says, an angel, but an angel's a messenger of God. And the angel said, what's your name? What's your name? He said, Jacob. Now on, your name is Israel, for you have wrestled with God and have not succumbed. So even the name Israel is just like for perpetual contemplation and unpacking. To be Israel means to be someone who wrestles with the life. A spiritual warrior, someone who doesn't succumb.
Like the burning bush.
Like the burning bush, right. Always burning with life's energy and not being consumed. Being a burning bush. Standing in the fire. Think metaphors. It's like, it's inspiring.
Yes.
And that's why I want to teach this material, because it can inspire us to keep practicing being human beings in the midst of all of our folly and hardship and fear. And again, this applies to how we are with our beloved, our intimate family, and how we are in the public sphere and in the sweep of history. It's like this applies on every level, because all you got is your own body and your own presence. So let's be with each other the way God says, I'll be with you, in a way that reminds each other, yes, say yes to life. Go for it. Keep your heart open. Unfold. It's going to be hard. I know. It is hard. And it's a mess. And it's a catastrophe. And all of it. And let's do it. Let's do it. Diane.
And there are all these things that seem like you're following life unfolding, but it gets to a bad place.
Mm-hmm. Yes, for example.
Like
That third piece of chocolate cake.
Oh, you're not talking about you, okay.
False prophets and.
Right.
Or in your own life.
And movements that have,
That's right.
that have gained a lot of support. I mean, watching this documentary about the Vietnam War and how it changed America.
Mm.
And, I was out protesting
Yeah.
Maybe that wasn't really what life unfolding was asking me to do, or
Oh.
in that way, or some,
We are so impressionable. We
Yeah.
are such herd animals. There
Yeah.
are so many impediments. And there are no guarantees right now. And yet we know we can envision a better world and follow that. But that's not
We might be wrong.
that. Well, sure. But which side do you want to be on?
Take your best guess, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
Yes.
Probably not wrong.
yes.
Okay, so I'm saying that any spiritual tradition, including Judaism, that invites more aliveness, invites more engagement, invites less judgment, invites it. That's where I want to play. That's the sandbox I want to play in. And so I'm all in. And I can't even imagine not being in that game. So come play with me. You know, that's all I have to say. But no, we're looking at a world right now that we haven't had to face, but that every other generation before us had to face. And they didn't give up. And they kept the flame alive. So we can too. It's kind of that just, you know, we haven't been challenged. But this tradition's been through many empires, you know, and has continued to take the side of life unfolding in the best ways we can. Yes, Susan.
I also have to learn from my mistakes. I make mistakes. Risk involves possibly making a mistake, maybe following something where I thought, and then when I find out, do I beat myself up for it? Or do I take a turn and go in a different direction? I mean, there are no guarantees and there's no real roadmap other than I'll be with you. And this
I'll be with you and we're headed towards the promised land.
Yeah, right.
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 Right. And so then let's look at these sort of three, what I said, protagonists. We talked about Moses being stymied by no one listening. And what I want to say about, well, I'll come back to that in a bit. Israel, the Israelites are stymied because of crushed spirit, because of fear, because of learned hopelessness, right? All honestly come by, right? But all squashing what the Torah says is our true nature. And so there's this, I want to share with you this great midrash. So remember, a midrash is something that takes an anomaly in the text and then says, or something interesting, curious. So it says at the end of, I'll just read this to you. You don't have to go back. God says to Moses, assemble the elders and go to Pharaoh. So Moses does. And in verse 29, Moses and Aaron have come back. And as I read, Moses and Aaron went and assembled all the elders of the Israelites. And when the elders heard that Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh was going to liberate them, they bowed low in homage. The very next verse says, afterward, Moses and Aaron went and said to Pharaoh, thus says Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, let my people go. What's going on? What's wrong with this story?
Just that they didn't listen and then the elders did listen.
No. Just take this little segment here. This is in chapter 4, before they wouldn't listen. God says to Moses, go to the elders, tell them, the elders do, they bow low in homage that we're going to go to Pharaoh. And then it says, afterward, Moses and Aaron went and said to Pharaoh. Yeah.
It was just Moses and Aaron.
Yeah. So the close readers say, where'd the elders go?
Yeah.
They were just there in the last verse.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the midrash. This is from, this is old stuff. Where had the elders gone? For they are no longer listed. though the Almighty had commanded Moses, you must go, you and the elders of Israel. That's exactly what it says when Moses at the burning bush. Our rabbi said, the elders went along at the beginning, but stealthily slipped away. One by one, two by two, and disappeared. By the time they reached Pharaoh's palace, not one of them remained. This is witnessed by the text. Where were the elders? They had slipped away because they were afraid to go on. I just like, we're telling stories, so you can picture that, right? Okay, we're coming. Wait, we're going. Well, what? I forgot I left the stove on. So it's just this. I love it because it's a good storytelling. It's like, yeah, they're too scared. They were too scared. Carol?
I sort of went in another direction, which is that they didn't want to tell a story about Moses leaving the elders, Moses taking it on himself and Aaron and just leaving them in the anteroom or wherever.
Just in case.
Just in case. And I think that's an interesting story too.
Right, that could be another story.
Nobody likes to say bad things about Moses, so the other one's a very charming. But I've also, this whole time, as soon as you said that Moses' mouth was, the sheath was uncircumcised, I started wondering when, I know it talks about him being that way early on, but what I thought is that it closed completely when he killed the overseer.
His mouth closed.
His mouth closed, he did not speak. And all these years as a shepherd, as a husband, as a father, he hasn't spoken. And finally, in God's presence, he is at least able to say, I cannot speak.
Beautiful. You'll write that.
Maybe.
Moses is such a rich character. I mean, we could talk. I mean, is Moses's reluctance to go. I mean, when we're reading the story of the burning bush, for example, after Moses says, okay, I'll just cite some of these for you. Moses' first response when he gets the message at the burning bush is, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh? And then God says, I'll be with you. And Moses says, well, when I come and say, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, and they ask, what is his name? What shall I say to them? Like what? And God says, Ehiyeh asher ehiyeh, I am with you. I will be with you. I am becoming. And then he gets his instructions about how they're going to, in chapter 3, when he's at the burning bush, Moses gets the whole story. It's not going to be easy, but I'm going to take you out and I'll stretch out my hand and smite Egypt and you guys are going to go free. And Moses says, what if they do not believe me and don't listen to me? There it is, lo yishma'u. And say, no, you're making this up. And that's when God says, okay, here, take this staff, throw it on the ground. It's going to turn into a snake. Now pick it up. And now take your hand and put it inside your cloak and take it out. And it's going to be just covered with the scales. And now put it back. Okay, so you got your sign. So he says that. Okay. And then he gives him another sign, which is, he already tells him that he's going to be able to change the Nile into blood. So Moses got all these signs. And Moses says, please, my Lord, I've never been a man of words, either in times past or now that you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and slow of tongue. And kaved peh, heavy of mouth and heavy of tongue. And the Eternal then starts to lose, God starts to lose his temper and says, who gives human speech? And I've been looked on this line. Who gives human speech? Who makes them dumb or deaf, seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Eternal? And I've been thinking about that line. It's like, do you think you're like some? I'm behind all this. It's like I'm supporting you. I'm your sustenance. Who? Well, listen to me. And then now go, and I will be with you as you speak, and will instruct you what to say. And Moses said, and this is it, please, oh my Lord, send somebody else. The Hebrew is, Vayomer bi Adoni, shlach na biyad tishalach. Send. Isn't that amazing? That's why this is such a great story. It's like, here we are. Yeah, it's you. No, this is your job. Yeah, no, you have to go and to the teacher and talk to the teacher. No.
Have to make the phone call.
You have to make the phone call and apologize. You have to, the thing that's going to allow the next thing to happen.
Yes.
Right? We are impeded. That's what impeded speech means. If we impede that, we impede our life.
It's
Say again?
the courage
The courage.
Oh, courage.
to
Yes.
do.
The courage to do it. But we're always impeding that because, please, no, I don't want.
It's too daunting.
It's too daunting, but this is it. This is your life. Are you going to spend your entire time resisting what you need to do next?
See, that's maybe because I'm an elder. That's why I think the elders earlier snuck away. You're going to do it.
The young ones.
Moses is a young man.
Right. Wow. So Moses actually says, after all of this, God's been like, it's like, okay, this is good. I'll do this for you. I'll do that for you. I'll speak to you. You don't. And Moses says, please send somebody else. The Eternal became angry with Moses. Finally, God loses him. Parents, right? It's like, I'm thinking about my kids even today sometimes. Like,
Yes.
well, you have to make the call.
Yes.
You have to get your car inspected. It's like, what?
I waited till the last minute to get my car.
You have to make the doctor's appointment. So finally, God loses God's temper and says, but doesn't say, oh, the hell with you. It says, okay, there's your brother Aaron the Levite. I know he speaks well. Even now, he is setting out to meet you, and he'll be so joyful to see you again, because Moses has been gone for years and years now. You shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth. I will be with you and with him as you speak, and I'll tell you both what to do, and he'll speak for you and be your spokesman. Now, take the rod with you, with which you shall perform the sign. And finally, Moses goes, right? Isn't that a great chapter? I don't think we should skip over it. It's like the story, we're each Moses, or our kid is, or it's like,
We're all of them.
it's all of it. It's like, here's the message. This is how you're going to liberate the next moment of your life. And again, I'm not talking about saving the world. It's like, forget it. We don't know what's going to happen in the world, but how you want to live in this world. And here's the way you're going to liberate the next moment of your life. Come on already.
You're gonna talk your brother into.
Huh?
You're gonna talk your.
Yeah, okay, fine. I'll talk your brother. That's right. You talk your brother into doing it. Well, come on.
Doing what?
Or like Dorothy and her friends like linking hands and walking up to the wizard, and then the Cowardly Lion jumping out the window. It's like, that's why it's such a great
Great story.
It's another great story.
Yeah.
Paul, you want to say
A
something?
couple of things quickly. Again, according to Aviva Zornberg, she had talked about how Aaron had always been groomed to be like the next leader, and that they had, I think she called them like these play scrolls that, that they had these, every weekend they would go off and it'd be sort of like pre-Torah stories. And I think the last thing that Pharaoh did was you can't even have the time to go off into reverie, doing
Mhm.
that stuff. So it's sort of like a person today
There's,
who is so
yes.
busy in his job that he doesn't have time to look at the moon. And so you can in your busyness, you can enslave yourself, so you don't have time to just to be still and all of that.
Stop and smell the rain.
Also, I get the feeling that, sort of God is kind of making it up as he goes along. And, and then Moses himself he has his own problems, like the fact that he comes out and he has leprosy. I mean, there's reasons you have leprosy, I suppose. So that Moses was very flawed in terms of like the speech that he was going through. So it's almost as if Moses is just, God's making it up as he goes along. And Moses is literally just one step ahead of everyone else in terms of, so that he is on this journey to have his mouth liberated and to have all of these things resolved. But he does have a certain bearing so that he knows that he can probably do it better than anyone else, so.
Thank you. Okay, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but there is a rich tradition of Moses and Aaron's relationship.
Yeah.
Moses is the younger brother. So one of the Midrashic traditions is Moses doesn't want to do it because he doesn't want to usurp his older brother's role. And then God says, no, Aaron's going to be very happy to see you. So there's a whole other stream of talk. And then there's the Midrashic stream about what it means to have a crushed spirit. One of the things that Pharaoh did was he prevented the Israelites from having time to contemplate. That's why the Sabbath is such an essential part of Jewish tradition, and why the commandment says of the Sabbath that you have to let everyone who works for you also rest and be restored on the seventh day, because that's what makes us human. And what makes us human, again, is our capacity to contemplate, to imagine, to reflect, and so all of that is in the story too. What does it mean to have a crushed spirit? And what is the strategy? And this certainly gets into the strategy of our current administration, which is to have us so rattled, so overwhelmed all the time that we can't think straight. We can't. So that's why it becomes even more countercultural and more, as it were, an activist position to make sure you have a spiritual community that gets together to reflect in this way, right? Because
Reflect and act.
well, the action comes after.
Yes.
But I'm talking the action where everyone's going to figure out what they need to do, but not if you can't stop and reflect about it,
That's right.
or even calm yourself internally,
Yes.
or, and that's all part of the strategy of oppressive regimes, right? Yet, and this is where being Jewish is so cool, we are still the example of how spiritual resistance keeps a people alive, right? And of course, there are countless other examples of spiritual resistance. I'm not making a special, I just like being Jewish. And I like that this is my inheritance. Thousands of years, we are doing this for this purpose, to remember what it means to be a soul and not just a cog, not just a reaction, but an actor, not just, all of those things. So now let's also look at the other way the flow is impeded. And Rabbi Zornberg speaks a lot about Pharaoh now. She calls it the pathology of arrogance. There is a famous line from Ezekiel. I must have written the page down. Oh, yeah. Pharaoh says, my river Nile is my own. I made it for myself.
Gulf of America.
Gulf of America, anyone? Yeah.
Yeah. Gulf of America.
Again, but let's not externalize too far because we all do this. We all
Yes.
do this. But yes, Gulf of America is a perfect example, actually. I can name the world and it's mine, right? The pathology of arrogance, as Zornberg says, let me find her,
When did she write that book?
this book about 10 years ago.
Contemporary.
She's around. She's awesome. Yes, in description of Pharaoh, Ezekiel says, "Behold, I am against you, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, mighty monster, sprawling in his channels, who said, my river is my own. I made it. I have increased my power through my own wisdom." Pharaoh becomes a prototype of the pathology of arrogance. But the point that strikes us forcefully is the fear of vulnerability that lies at the heart of
Right.
such arrogance. Isn't that well said?
Yeah.
She then quotes Sartre, who in his book called Semite and Anti-Semite, he said, how can anyone choose to reason so falsely? It is simply the old yearning for impermeability. There are people who are attracted by the permanence of stone. They would like to be solid and impenetrable. They do not want change, for who knows what change might bring. So this is the description, right, of the hardened heart, the impermeable, impervious heart that we also, as humans, yearn for on some level, so that we won't be hurt, you know. Zornberg then says, she quotes the famous psychoanalyst Erich Neumann, who said, let's see, it's a great quote. Pharaoh, this is Zornberg. Pharaoh, unhearing, unspeaking, all orifices sealed, represents a powerful longing, the quote, desire to remain unconscious, as Newman terms it. And then Zornberg writes, I am suggesting that Pharaoh becomes a demonic expression of the human desire to be unchanging and invulnerable like God. So, sure. I am suggesting that Pharaoh becomes a demonic expression of the human desire to be unchanging and invulnerable like God. We don't want to die. And we don't, we want to be hurt. We want to be in charge. The world is, it's like life is so not just hard, but like scary and like uncertain. And it's like, boy, you have to be brave to do this. I want to have my brother's arm. I'm like, get Moses. It's like, okay, Aaron will come. All right. We need each other for this reason. We're not impervious, and nobody's in charge. But Pharaoh's inability to listen to the message that Moses is bringing comes from that other place of hard-heartedness, arrogance, thinking that we're in control. And yes, we're watching it. It's unbelievable. When you talk about the kind of regressive masculinity that's like sort of taking over our administration, it's the lords of the universe, right? Men who actually are playing this game, like they think that's actually that's the game. They have no consciousness of the message from the burning bush. And we're facing it. and it is bad. So now let's see. Oh, good. I have a few minutes. So now I want to turn to this teaching from Yehuda Leib Alter, the rabbi of Gera Rebbe, who's known as the Sfat Emet. Who addresses the verse, "Indeed, the children of Israel have not listened to me," said Moses. "So how will Pharaoh listen, since I'm a man of uncircumcised lips?" And the Sfat Emet is talking to his people, us, now, through his book, of what it means to listen. Hearing requires being empty of everything. This is the essence of exile today. And when he says exile, he's talking about exile from ourselves, exile from the connection to the divine, exile that we're disconnected. And he's writing about 1900, but it still speaks. Our inability to empty ourselves, to forget this world's vanities, so that we empty the heart to hear God's word without all of our distracting thoughts. That's what the Sfat Emet says. Oh, golly. Either we're so full of our own arrogance, so full of ourselves, or we're so full of our own fear, or we're so full of our own, what are they going to think of me? Or we're so full, what's going to happen? I don't know what's going to happen. Or there's so, it's on and on and on. But the aliveness is just waiting there to be expressed. But we have to be ready to risk it. Jerry?
Why do we keep repeating this pattern?
Yeah. Yeah. It seems to be the human condition forever.
Yeah.
And yet,
Are we stupid?
No.
yeah.
I think things are,
No.
are things getting better or are they getting worse?
Are things getting better? No, I can't answer the question.
Yeah.
That's like, why am I here question? It's like,
Why am I here?
why? It's like, yeah, a part of me is, as I look at the future next couple of decades, even though I can't predict the future, it's like, yeah, why? We don't have the answer, Jerry. All we have is each other and the voice from the burning bush saying, don't give up, go to Pharaoh, align yourself with my energy. It's good to be alive. But why? What is with our species? It's unbelievable.
And we may become extinct.
Oh, yeah, in the big picture. But
We're here.
we may become extinct. I know I'm going to die one day.
Yeah.
Your soul is
We are
immortal.
gonna-
We don't know if my soul's immortal. If you find,
Yeah,
for all of us,
I-
wait, Paul, for all of us that find comfort in that,
Yeah, yeah.
good.
I guess,
All I know is I'm going to die.
yes.
That's all I really know. I have deep intuitions about energy existing forever, and I take great comfort from that. And I'm one of those people who actually believes in, who actually has a sense of my soul, right? But it's like, we'll find out by and by. You know, I'm curious.
Do you have a sense of previous lives at all?
I don't. Anyway, we'll all find out by and by. We're going to go extinct. I'm definitely going to go extinct. So what do I do in the meantime?
Have as much fun as you can and try to leave the place a
Well-
little better than you found it.
Have as much fun as you can and try to leave the place a little better than you found it.
That's what it's a Girl Scout camp.
Girl Scouts.
Yeah.
So just 1 second, Paul. Fatalism is not Judaism.
That's-
If you want to play the Jewish game, we are wrestling with all of this,
Yes,
just like you are right now.
yeah.
And we are not succumbing. Jacob wrestled all night and did not succumb. And God said, your new name is Israel, for you have wrestled with God, with the meaning of life, with this mystery of existence, with this confounding, frustrating, unbelievably despair-inducing world, and you haven't succumbed. So to be a Jew means you stand in that space. And if one of us falters, then come talk to me and I'll talk to you, because this is what I want to make as my final point today. And first I'll let Paul, you want to say something?
As quickly as I can. According to Aviva Zornberg, what she says is that Adam, after like 20 minutes in the garden, he screws up and he says, oh, he has like a nervous breakdown. What's going on? And so then along comes Abraham, who's on this quest. He realizes that there's something out there, and this quest for the divine or whatever. Then there's Isaac, who is so screwed up because his father almost killed him, but he has a certain sense of service, and Abraham had the vision in the mountain, Isaac is in the field, and then along comes Jacob, who in that with the angels in the ladder, he's now in his body, and the image for him is the house. So now it's actually going to take place with Jacob. So, and then it all leads up to the revelation at Sinai. So that completes the whole thing from Adam screwing up to Sinai, where with Sinai and the revelation of the Torah, you now have the roadmap to then become a tzaddik. So it's there. I mean, it's
that's
it's up to you.
Right. The story of the Torah is life unfolding creates us. Life unfolding actually has apparently no idea what he's getting into. And so then comes the flood, and then, well, I like Abraham, I'll pick it, then no, okay, wait, I have to give them some laws. And so yes, the Torah is a progression of God now as a character trying to figure out what to do with this.
This is God making it up as he goes.
Yeah. So in our story, God creates this. I love this idea. I'll make human beings who have the capacity to create and destroy, but I'll also give them it's like, and it all just goes and goes, and it's terrible. And it's like, okay, I'll give them laws, and I'll pick this people, and this is how the Jews this is our self-understanding in mythic terms. I'll pick this people to give them laws about how to create a society where everyone's treated fairly and with dignity, and then they'll manifest it. And even that is like, well, we succeed sometimes. Right? We're working on it. I'm almost out of time, but I see a few hands and I'm going to recognize them. But what Paul just said is that it's like, yes, that's the next class series, I guess. All right.
He just described something I was just trying to get a hold of my head. And what he described is the evolution of humanity. He's describing how this happened, that happened, and now here's Jacob struggling. But I call that
It's our
the
cultural
evolution of
mythology.
humanity. So if this is an experiment, our part is to evolve.
Right.
And right now we're at a kind of a low point in general, but I still think that in individual places we have evolved.
The first time you bake bread, you're not going to be successful. Maybe the fifth or sixth time.
When you finally figure out how to get
the loaf, and then there's certain rules along the way. How do you bake the bread?
Thank you, Laurie. Desiree, and then.
Oh, okay, so I'll be real quick. God is up there and he's created Adam, and he says to the archangel Michael, look what I've done. And Michael looks at Adam and says, what? You took a perfectly good monkey and gave it anxiety.
That's great.
Wonderful.
So I had a rabbi teacher long ago who said to take this whole thing and boil it down into, this is what you're supposed to do. Love God and be a mensch.
Love God and be a mensch. Thank you. So what I want to say about this, going back to this passage about not listening, is that the Sfat Emet teaches, and then Aviva Zornberg expands on this, that Moses couldn't speak because no one would listen to him. So now I want to put that one out as what our purpose is. Moses' speech was impeded because no one would listen to him. And listen, not just
Here.
hear, pay attention. So the thrust of that teaching is that by listening and attending to people, that's when their divine nature can emerge. And it's by our attention that people become their better or their fuller selves. We all know this. We all know this. We all know when we gave what we all know this. I mean, it's the therapeutic model, but it's also, you don't have to be a therapist to understand what it means to really listen to your kid or your friend or the person who needs to talk, or what's impeded can then flow. But it requires attention. And so when we say listen, Israel, we can direct that idea of paying attention to our environment and to the people around us, the people we love, with the kind of attention that will allow them to take the sheath off their lips. And it's messy, right? Life is just messy. Stories are clean. Stories can be nice, and we love stories. That's why we love stories, right? Because they begin and they end. But the teaching in the story isn't just that the Pharaoh couldn't hear because of his arrogance, and the children of Israel couldn't hear because their spirits were crushed. Moses couldn't speak because no one would listen to him. And so there's what I'm talking about is a righteous feedback loop of us getting out of our own arrogance or our own feeling of hopelessness in order to be present, which allows the person we're with to become present. It's like alchemy. It's love. It's love. And it's not going to necessarily, there are no guaranteed outcomes. But how do we want to walk in the world? Do we want to be impeded, or do we want life unfolding to be present and flowing in our exchanges? And that's liberatory. That's what liberation is. And yes, if all of us did that, if all of us were capable of getting out of our own way and of humbly opening ourselves to life unfolding, flowing through us, positive change takes place. And if we can, which is a message not to give up also, because the future is not written. And the cycles go on, but our presence matters in that way that is absolutely incalculable for the people around us. And who do we really have more than the people around us? Nobody. I mean, so that's what I wanted to share about this amazing message about the people couldn't hear, Pharaoh couldn't hear, Moses couldn't speak. But life unfolding is saying, go tell Pharaoh, go tell the people. So
We become more speechless as we age. The more we see, the more we learn, the more we live through. Invariably, almost every day, I'm speechless. I've heard enough. Shabbos became, I would never turn the TV on Shabbos. It's a gift.
Don't succumb to despair, despite all the reasons to despair. Don't succumb to trying to be impermeable, despite all the reasons we might want to be impervious and protect ourselves. Don't succumb to any of it. Listen, hear, be with, draw out, elicit, let life through you, so that that which is life unfolding can be manifested through you. That's the God that calls to Moses from the burning bush. And that's the God I worship.
Just a comment as a speech pathologist, people who stutter never stutter alone, they only stutter around other people.
Really?
They can also sing.
Well, that's the whole, yes,
Yeah.
but in terms of speech itself, they don't stutter by themselves.
Wow.
It's all up here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Jerry's a speech pathologist, and that's fascinating. So we're at our closing point. So I want to say I want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, for the opportunity to express myself. If I didn't have this help, I think it's obvious from everything I've said that how much this assists me to be the person I want to be in the world. And may those righteous feedback loops proliferate in every way that we can. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're just not as big as.
Announcements, events coming up. And we're having a forum party here on Thursday evening, the 13th. And there are